All right, guys. So the last lesson we talked about how Reconstruction ended. Well, today's essential question is how did Reconstruction change South Carolina? So we've already had 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. We've talked about nationally how things happened. Talked about the Klan in Tennessee. Talked about, Grant and his presidency a little bit. Well, today we're going to talk about how Reconstruction actually ends. Or how it affects South Carolina, not how it ends. South Carolina, like the rest of the South, had a lot of difficulty dealing with Reconstruction. Under President Johnson, South Carolina very, very easily met all the requirements because Johnson's Reconstruction plan was very simple. Admit slavery's over, admit the Civil War's over, say an oath of loyalty, you're readmitted. So we did that. Radical Reconstruction takes a little bit longer. South Carolina became part of the 2nd Military District. Remember, the South's divided into 5. We're District 2. So District 1's Virginia because it was the biggest state. District 3's Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. Mississippi and Arkansas are District 4. Louisiana and Texas are District 5. If you notice, remember, Tennessee was conquered before the war was over. Tennessee was never in Reconstruction. So the Republican Party very quickly takes over South Carolina, mainly because of the second part of the 14th Amendment, which says that former Confederates can no longer serve in office. As a result, you have carpetbaggers, scalawags, and African Americans that control pretty much all of the politics, all the political power in South Carolina. During Radical Reconstruction, the state government was dominated by these groups. Of those elected during Reconstruction, over half of them in South Carolina was black. In 1870, South Carolina has the first black congressman for our state. His name is Joseph Rainey. I'm trying to make this so you guys can actually see the words because for some reason it always wants to change itself. Joseph Rainey is the first black congressman elected. This is a picture of Joseph Rainey here. These are all the black congressmen that were elected to South Carolina during Reconstruction. And if you'll notice, a lot of them are going to be like Homer Plessy. They're going to look white because the laws of the South said if you have any black blood in you, pretty much you're black. In Charleston in 1868, as part of the requirement to regain statehood, representatives meet to write a new state constitution. At the meeting, 75 of the writers were black, 54 of them are white. So blacks gain a lot more civil rights because of this new state constitution. This is the Constitution of 1868. South Carolina is really creative with the names of our constitution, so we pretty much just name it after the year it's written. This new constitution allows for universal male suffrage. Suffrage vocabulary, remember, it means the right to vote. It has nothing to do with suffering. Representation would only be based on population. Public education is now going to be provided for all, so it's not going to be based on wealth anymore, the representation. Public education is provided for all. And for the first time ever in our state, divorce became something that could happen. This is a picture of what our new state constitution looked like. This is the beginning of it. Starts off, all men are born free and equal, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among which are the rights of enjoying, defending their lives and liberties, of acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and of seeking and obtaining their safety and happiness. This is a lot like another document that we have that says, we believe these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Basically, they copied this from the Declaration of Independence. Slavery shall never exist in this state, neither shall involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. That's the 13th Amendment. So we're taking parts of other documents and making them our own. All political power is wrested and derived from the people only. Therefore, they have the right at all times to modify their form of government in such a manner as they may deem expedient. That means intelligent, when the public good demands. This is the idea of popular sovereignty. Also, it comes from the Declaration of Independence. And every citizen of this state owes paramount allegiance to the Constitution. This is that oath of loyalty that was required. This is the idea of federalism, that our national government is above the state government. This is anti-states' rights, so that we can argue against the idea that South Carolina says, well, we have the right to do what we want to, even if it is a national law. So we are saying we don't have that right anymore. The national government comes first. Like the rest of the nation, South Carolina struggles with corruption during this time period. The Republican government during this time period, since it was the only government, was very corrupt. You guys have heard this saying. Probably the most common place that I've heard it is Spider-Man, where there's a saying that says, with power comes great responsibility. But there's also another saying that says, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's what's happening with the Republicans at this time. Since there is no party to challenge them, the Republicans have become corrupt. Grant, as president, his administration had lots of corruption, not Grant himself, but the people in charge. But the Republican Printing Company is formed during this time. The Republican Printing Company printed every document for our state. A bill comes for $45,000. Well, the Republican Printing Company changes it from $45,000 to $450,000. Basically, they just stole $400,000 from our state government. The governor of South Carolina, Franklin Moses Jr., is accused of stealing, but he actually uses martial law, the military, to avoid the charges. Democrats are tired of Republican rule in the South. They're tired of the corruption. They're also tired of rights being given to African Americans, but that's a whole different point. I want to get to some of that here. July 4th, 1876, a series of events will happen that becomes known as the Hamburg Massacre. Hamburg, South Carolina is pretty much where North Augusta is today. On this day, the 4th National Guard of Hamburg, or the city of Hamburg, South Carolina. So the National Guard of South Carolina is here, and they are drilling, they are practicing. And they're crossing a street when a white farmer wants to cross the road they're using. There are two sides of the story. Side number one, white man claims the National Guard, comprised of just black people, because Hamburg was a predominantly black city, purposely blocked the roadway so he couldn't cross, and it starts an argument. The other side, the commander of the National Guard, Captain Adams, claims that the farmer in a wagon tries to run over them with his wagon. So it becomes a big issue. You've got this political cartoon right here. If you look up here on these things put on this post, it says Negroes shot in cold blood in Hamburg, South Carolina. This woman, remember we talked about just the other day that women in political cartoons represent things that need to be protected, things that are precious. Well, this woman's not quite right. If you look at her, she's holding scales. Well, in political cartoons, the woman that holds scales is Justice. But there's something wrong with her in this picture. Justice is always supposed to have a blindfold over her eyes. Justice is supposed to be blind. And when you look at this, you look at the scale, it says 1 white, 6 Negroes. What this is saying here, 1 white person was worth more than all the blacks that were killed. All right, that is the problem with this political cartoon. That is what the problem with Hamburg, South Carolina was. After heated words between the two groups, they end up in court. General Butler, now he's not really a general anymore. He was a general during the Civil War. He was a Confederate. He goes into the court and he demands the National Guard surrender their weapons. technically the National Guard aren't allowed to surrender their weapons because General Butler, first of all, is not an officer of the United States military, and these weapons do belong to the United States military, so they're not even allowed to turn them over. Hundreds of white men gather with weapons and a cannon from Augusta to attack the armory where the National Guard is holding themselves up in. One white man named Thomas Mackey Merriweather was shot in the head during the incident, and he dies instantly. So he's the one that shot during the riot. You guys have seen this monument in downtown North Augusta. This monument is the Merriweather Monument. It is to that one guy, the white guy that was shot attacking the Black National Guard. It says this memorial is erected to the young hero of the Hamburg riot. So they're calling him a hero for attacking the National Guard. By the state under an act of the General Assembly with the aid of admiring friends. Now, if you read the other sides of this monument, you guys can go there yourselves and look at it. I almost fell. It actually talks about things like white supremacy, things like that. But people don't realize, a lot of people don't realize that this is a racist monument because they don't read it. There are other people that were killed in the Hamburg massacre. There were African Americans that were killed during the incident. This is the monument that was put up for them. For extra credit, I'm actually going to tell you guys you can go and get your picture taken with it. If you get your picture taken with both monuments, I will give you extra credit. Now, this monument I'm going to have to give you guys directions to because it's not exactly easy to find. Don't go there at night because it's not in the best neighborhood. But if you'll notice, if you look closely at it, Merriweather's name's on it too. So not only is this monument's for everybody that was a victim, but this is only for the white guy who technically was committing treason at the time. Penalty should have been death anyway. The guardsmen, National Guardsmen, tried to escape, but they are rounded up, put into a ring. They are chosen at random to be executed, and they are shot. They're told to drop their weapons and run, and then they shoot them in the back. The town, which was made mostly up of black people, is looted by the white people of the area. No punishments were handed out to any of the white people involved in the event. However, there is an event that leads to more violence in South Carolina, and this is an event that leads to more violence, and the rise of a man named Benjamin Ryan Tillman, which we will talk about later. Needless to say, he's pretty racist. So here we've got Augusta right here. Here's Stevens Creek. North Augusta is going to be like right here. All right, so here's Little Horse Creek. Here's North Augusta right here, right in this area. Hamburg's right here. At the monument's unveiling, the one in downtown North Augusta, February 16th, 1916, Daniel Henderson celebrated the moment with a speech in which he said, "The event started a movement which established beyond question that this is a white man's country to be ruled by white men forever." So unfortunately, that monument is a huge symbol of racism. It's just nobody knows all about it. Henderson was actually the attorney. There were 59 white men charged in the Hamburg massacre. He's the attorney that gets all 59 of them found innocent and gets the charges thrown out. The end of radical Reconstruction in South Carolina comes along with controversy, much like what happened with the rest of the United States. You had the election of 1876, where you had the compromise of 1877 with Tilden versus Hayes coming up. Well, in South Carolina, we have a disputed election too, but this is for our governor. Republicans nominate a guy named Daniel Chamberlain. He's one of the owners of the Republican Printing Company, so he's a crook. The Democrats nominate a former Confederate soldier, Wade Hampton III. So you have a Redeemer and a Republican running against each other. The Democrats use both reason and terrorism. Wade Hampton III is actually honest with the black people. He says, look, I need you. I don't like you, but I need you to win this election. I promise I will give you equal rights in the state of South Carolina while I am governor if you help me win. And he wasn't lying. However, he also has a guy that is running his election campaign called Martin. His name is Martin Gary. And he organizes a terror program to force the blacks into voting for Hampton. Now, the KKK is made illegal by the Klan Act. All they do is rename the Klan. At this point in time, this new group is called the Red Shirts. They're also called rifle clubs. They march throughout South Carolina. So they're wearing red shirts. They're called rifle clubs. They're called both names, the Red Shirts and Rifle Clubs. They're shouting, hurrah for Hampton. And these clubs get into a number of skirmishes with black militia groups, black military groups. A skirmish is a small battle. And in these skirmishes, in these little incidents, riots break out throughout the state of South Carolina. You have incidents like this. This is the office of the U.S. Marshal. This black man has gone there to get help. You've got signs, KKK, all these other signs. Can't really read them. But this guy is clearly, he's got a whip. He's intimidating this black man. All the military is doing is standing between. Really, martial law now has degraded to the point where they're kind of just getting in the way and saying, don't do it in front of us. Wait till later. That way we don't have to do anything about it. So martial law really isn't protecting things anymore. There is fraud on both sides. The Republicans, the Democrats on election day, people vote multiple times. Both sides claim victory. The decision is left up to the state legislature. And it is unclear who actually has won. And so for a short period of time, South Carolina actually does have two governors. We have Wade Hampton III, and we have the Republican that is running for office as well. Wade Hampton III promises that he is elected, and either he will be given the position of governor or he will become the military governor of South Carolina. For 4 months, we have two governors. But eventually, when Rutherford B. Hayes withdraws the troops, withdraws martial law out of South Carolina, there is nobody left to protect Daniel Chamberlain. And so Wade Hampton III starts marching his troops up to force Daniel Chamberlain out of office. Daniel Chamberlain and the Republicans flee in fear of what's going to happen. I hit the wrong button. Done. And because of that, Wade Hampton III, the Redeemer, does take over as governor of South Carolina. Now, there are successes and there are failures for Reconstruction. So remember that I'm asking you, how did it affect South Carolina? How did Reconstruction, that jurisdictional question? There are some achievements. We get the 13th, slavery is ended. We get the 14th, African Americans are made citizens. We get the 15th, blacks are able to vote, kind of. We get public education in South Carolina. That's the only thing that doesn't leave. Hospitals, prisons, orphanages, we get all of those temporarily until the Redeemers take over. But then there are failures. Racism still exists. You have the rifle clubs, the red shirts, the KKK. Technically, they're not called the Klan anymore, but it doesn't mean they don't exist. The grandfather clause was created. Even though rights were taken away from the poor and the illiterate, they're given back to white people because, hey, you're white, your grandfather could have voted, so we're going to give you back the right to vote. You got the literacy tests, you got the poll taxes, you got the black codes, which literally bring back slavery. So your question, your essential question at the beginning of the lesson, we went over this. How did Reconstruction change South Carolina? So your job now is to answer this question. Give me evidence, give me specifics, give me details telling me how it changed the state of South Carolina. You've got one more lesson left for your virtual work. I will get that to you guys. Got questions? Email me.